So, writer's block. It's one of the most annoying things when you're a music producer. Sometimes you sit in that studio chair, whether it's for an hour or for a day, and you can't get any ideas going. Sometimes you can't get in that creative flow. Well, I've got a few different techniques that I've used that kind of get me over that hump, and that's what I want to go over in this video today. So your studio time is really precious. Whether you've got a few hours here and there, or maybe a day every couple of weeks, for example, you need to make that time count. And there's nothing worse when you sit in that studio chair and no ideas come. You can't get any kind of creative flow going, and writer's block really just hits you between the eyes. Well, I've got a few different techniques that I use to kind of get over that hump, because yes, it does happen to me quite a bit. Every now and again, I'll sit in that studio chair and I just can't get going on whatever I want to. Sometimes it's a tight deadline on a remix, or maybe it's an original track and some label is asking for a B-side. You know, it's one of those things. It can happen to anybody. You can just sit there and your mind goes blank. So yeah, I've got a few different techniques that I use to kind of get around this, because as I say, your studio time is really precious and you need to get on and use that time effectively. Now, one of the most effective techniques that I know is changing your surroundings. If you're sitting in the same room, looking at the same computer screen with the same speakers putting out the same music, it's all gonna sound the same. So sometimes changing your surroundings can really help. Why not grab your headphones and your laptop and head to the park? Or go to a different room in your house, or maybe go to a friend's studio. It's all about changing your surroundings, and that will kind of spark creativity, because you're going to be in a different space and you're going to start thinking of different sounds. Now, if you watched any of my previous videos, you'll probably notice that this isn't my usual studio. That's because I'm in Pirate Studios in Leicester today. And if you haven't heard of Pirate Studios before, they're an amazing company that have DJ and music production studios up and down the UK, and they're really reasonably priced. In fact, you can hire at this whole studio for not very much at all, and it's feature packed as well. There's a vocal booth over there and all this amazing equipment behind me. All you need to do is bring your laptop along, plug it in, and you're ready to go. You're ready to make music, and it's amazing the change of surroundings. So if you haven't got a great studio at home, or you've got neighbours that don't like you playing the music too loud, or just you just want to change the scenery, then this can be a really great option. Come along, hire it out for a few hours or even for the whole day, and who knows what you come up with. I know I've come along today, I had a remix to do and I've already got an idea down, which is really, really great. It's just the change of surroundings, it really worked for me. Now, if you're interested in the Pirate Studios and you want to hire them out, I've actually managed to get a bit of discount from Pirate Studios. So if you click on the link in the description, you'll get a bit of discount for next time you book with Pirate Studios. So changing your surroundings can really help inspire you, and that's key to kind of getting over that writer's block. Now, there's lots of other things you can do to kind of inspire you to come up with ideas. And one of the things I really like doing is I like jumping into all the standard features of a DAW. For example, with Ableton, I like jumping into some of the instruments that come with Ableton. Now, this is one of the things that you might have overlooked when you first got your DAW. Whether you've got Logic, Ableton, Cubase, whatever you've got, you might have actually just kind of ignored some of those instruments that come with the software in favour of some other instrument or plugin that has got all the hype, and you thought, well, yeah, I need to buy that to kind of make my sound. Well, actually have a look at some of those standard plugins, because some of those work really, really well. One of the things I love is going into the Ableton folders and have a look at all the instruments within there. And there's so many presets, especially if you've got standard edition or suite edition. There's just so many different effects and instruments within there that can really spark creativity. Going back a few years, I used to use a whole load of third-party plugins to make all my sounds, like my bass and my leads and everything else like that. But just recently, I've been diving into some of the presets that are actually within Ableton, and I really love them. A lot of my recent tracks and remixes, for example, all the basses come from some of the standard bass patches within Ableton. It's amazing to think of that, because I would never have actually looked at that beforehand. But sometimes you can actually find some real gems in there. So just have a look through some of them, because some of them might be weird, some of them might not instantly work for you, but that actually might work for your sound. It might spark some creativity. Sometimes just play around with sounds and see what comes out. Don't necessarily go in there thinking this has to make a track, this has to make this certain sound. Just go in there and start playing around, because even if you're just playing around with an instrument that you might not be using a bit later, you might come up with a melody and then switch it for another instrument. It's crazy how these things happen, but I've gone through whole projects where I've had one synth, for example, which is the lead line. I've had it right from the start, and then just before the end of the project, I've changed change it to a different instrument, and that's it, it's worked. So sometimes just using any instrument within Ableton or whatever DAW you're using can actually really help you come up with some ideas. So don't concentrate too much on the sound, for example. Just start playing around with melodies or just start playing around with sounds. You never know how these things might work. So it's a case of kind of pushing through that it's not working phase and just playing around with sounds, because you can always replace them a bit later. It's one of the beautiful things about using instruments and things like that within Ableton. Now, if you can't find anything within your DAW that's sounding how you want it to, one of the things I like to do is go along to pluginboutique.com. Now, this is where I buy all my plugins and audio effects from. It's an amazing site, but did you know it's also got a free section as well? Loads of plugins, loads of instruments, loads of audio effects, completely free of charge. And I love jumping through there and seeing what's in there. Sometimes I'll download an instrument or an audio effect on there and just play around with it, see what comes out. There's some really, really great plugins, and it goes to show that you don't have to pay a lot, and in fact, nothing in this case, to get some really interesting sounds. So definitely head along to pluginboutique.com and check out their free section. There's so much stuff in there. I definitely recommend trying a few of those out. And finally, sample packs. Now, you know me, I love my samples. I'm always working with them, and when I need that inspiration, I always jump into old sample packs. If you're anything like me, you've got a sample library going back years, and if you're just starting, don't worry, you'll build it up as well. But I tend to go into old sample packs. It's amazing how many you collect over the years. So if you go into some old sample packs, you probably not listened to them for a while. You've moved on to other sample packs because they've become better, or they're a slightly different sound or a better quality or whatever. Sometimes jumping back to those old sample packs can really help. Now, I'm not saying you have to use those samples, but they can really spark inspiration. One of the things that I love doing is using the audio to MIDI feature of Ableton. I've gone over this before in previous videos, but if you jump into those old sample packs, you can find some melodies from there, transform them from audio into MIDI, and then you've got an idea to work with. You've got something to kind of to spark some creativity. Now, it might not be where the track ends up, but that's one of the nice things about doing it. It's kind of a happy accident. It's one of those things you do very spare of the moment, and sometimes those things can kind of come up with some really cool ideas. So that's generally where I get a lot of my ideas from. I'll jump into an old sample pack, I might find a melody in there, maybe even a vocal. Maybe a vocal I can transform into a synth line or some Rhodes keys or something like that. Something really weird that you wouldn't really know where it came from, but it just kind of works. Sometimes like taking a bass line from some old sample pack and then putting it through audio to MIDI, turning it into a chord. You know, you can come up with a chord line then. You know, there's so much stuff that you can do with old samples that you wouldn't actually think about. So, you know, those samples might not sound how you want them to straight out of the box, but there's loads of things you can do with them. You can cut them up, you can turn them to MIDI, you can really mess with them quite a bit, and who knows, your next idea might come from that crappy sample pack that you never thought would do anything. So those are just a few techniques that I use to get over writer's block, but don't worry about it. Every music producer gets writer's block from time to time. It's just one of those things with being creative. You can't be creative 100% of the time. Hopefully one of those techniques, or even a combination of them, will help you out. But if worst comes to the worst, just get out the studio, get some fresh air, and come back to it with a fresh head, because that usually always works for me. So I hope these tips have helped. If they have, give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification icon so you're notified whenever I upload a brand new video. I've got a load more videos like this on my channel, so definitely check it out, and hopefully I'll see you again in the next video.